I'm standing on a hill just outside Valentine, and right now the weather is getting weird, which is kind of the point. Actually, it's perfect, because what I want to know is, can you forecast the weather in Red Dead Redemption 2? So if Red Dead's weather really behaves like a real dynamic system, those same real-life clues should exist here too. But there's one problem. I'm not a meteorologist, so where would I even start? Luckily, we know weather forecasts aren't magic. They're built on observations. Meteorologists don't just look up and guess. They measure pressure, humidity, wind, cloud formations, which means my first job isn't forecasting the weather, it's learning how to read it. Now you're probably wondering, how are we going to do this? The first thing every weather forecast starts with is the sky. Clouds are one of the oldest forecasting tools we have. Different cloud formation often mean different things. Some bring rain, some mean clear skies, some warn that a storm is already on its way. So before looking at anything else, I wanted to know if Red Dead's cloud actually meant something. So here's how this is going to work. I'm going to make a forecast based on the rules the game seems to be using. Then I'm going to wait and see if Red Dead agrees with me. And if it does, that doesn't necessarily mean the system is realistic. It just means it is consistent, which for video game is sometimes more impressive. So let's see what happens. I'm still standing on that same hill outside of Valentine, and that's the perfect moment to say we actually have some extra data to work with. Within the game, we have access to the current temperature and time of the day. Needless to say, they will help us a lot. Right now, temperature is sitting just above freezing at 2 degrees Celsius, which is very cold but expected for this place at 6 a.m. The town sits directly at the base of the Grizzlies, so the freezing winds blow directly down the mountains across the Dakota River, lowering the plateau's temperature. The sky is doing that thing where you can't quite decide what it wants to be. Medium cloud cover, but there's still lots of sunlight getting through. Nothing feels urgent right now until I notice this cloud. But before we get into it, I think now it's the best moment to talk about what I learned when researching about clouds. Clouds are classified according to their height and appearance when looking from the ground. There are a lot of cloud classifications, but today I'm just gonna explain the ones we are looking at. And based on what we just observed, this is most likely a cumulus cloud. Cumulus literally means heap, describing those fluffy clouds that build upward. While it doesn't really indicate any kind of precipitation, it could change if it was a nimbus cloud, the ones with a darker color. But here, with our cumulus clouds, if anything changes, it should be gradual. But what really caught my attention was the speed it was moving. We know a full in-game day in Red Dead Redemption 2 lasts exactly 48 minutes in real-world time. Every 2 minutes equates to 1 in-game hour. Although this would explain why this cloud was moving so fast, I actually thought of something else. The temperature still haven't increased since dawn, which probably means the winds are still blowing fast. The wind direction actually checks out. The grizzlies are back there, and the clouds are getting pushed towards the town, and the big shadows being casted. While fluffy cumulus clouds usually indicate fair weather, seeing them racing across the sky like this could indicate a rapidly changing atmosphere. If these clouds start spreading or growing vertically, that usually means rain's on the way. So this time, I called rain for the next few hours, and let's see if the system agrees. Yeah, I think it's going to rain. I don't know, it's weird. I stood still and observed. The clouds were just passing by until they actually started spreading out into the shape of stratocumulus clouds. Low altitude clouds that, if they have a darker color, generally means precipitation. And it turns out I was actually right. Kinda. In under 2 in-game hours, it actually started raining. It wasn't a heavy rain, but more like a drizzle. Okay, to be honest, it only lasted a couple hours, that's like a minute in real life. Originally, I thought the clouds alone would be enough, but after standing around in a few places, I figured there's much more to it. You have to consider everything: temperature, the wind, the biome, time of the day. I actually tried running towards the clouds again, but I couldn't reach it. Looking at this footage now, this was so dumb. But the fact that it disappeared so quickly actually made perfect sense. While warm fronts usually bring long-lasting drizzles, a fast-moving atmosphere like we just saw could quickly shove a band of clouds across an area, resulting in a brief 1 to 2 hour drizzle window. That actually lines up with how drizzles work in real life. They are very likely to happen in the morning, especially if dark stratus clouds are present. That's because around sunrise, as the sun hits the ground, it breaks up the cloud layer, causing the drizzle to dissipate within a few hours. And all of this is just fascinating. Even if I didn't get it right, my prediction was rain, not drizzle, but still, I can't believe how much you can actually tell by just observing the sky in a video game. But there was one thing I completely underestimated: the wind. It wasn't the rain that surprised me, it was how quickly the whole system moved through the area. Clouds tell you what's happening, but they don't tell you how fast it is happening. And the problem is, wind is surprisingly difficult to observe, especially in a video game. You can't see it, you can only see what it does. So I started looking for a place where those effects would be impossible to miss. We are now heading to our next destination, the dry lands of New Austin. I am now at the iconic town of Armadillo, located at the southwest part of the map, the same one from the first game. New Austin isn't the first place people think when talking about weather. It's dry, it's hot. Most of the time the sky barely changes, but that's exactly what makes it stand out, because when it changes, boy, it's harsh. Deserts are known for massive temperature fluctuations, and one thing I learned while researching meteorology is that wind does a lot more than just make trees sway. It moves the weather itself, and we already saw that back in Valentine. So if I could figure out which way the wind was blowing and paid close attention to the clouds, maybe I could tell what kind of weather was coming next. Fortunately, Red Dead leaves behind a few clues: dust, smoke, bushes. Fun fact, this place is based on the real Sonoran Desert, a subtropical desert that receives rain twice a year, which allows me to look at the vegetation and speculate the wind speed in a video game. Thank you, nature. And what I found here was exactly what everybody expected: a huge nothing. Well, at least for now. The weather was fair, a little warm, sitting around 34 degrees Celsius. There are a lot of cumulus clouds in the sky, the white and fluffy ones, which means they don't necessarily indicate weather changes. And the reason we came here in the first place, the wind, it was actually calmer than I expected. The bushes were moving slowly and a very thin layer of dust was in the air. I still didn't have much to work with, and if I had to guess, the weather wouldn't change the next day. Yeah, this is fine, I guess. I think it's gonna stay like this. So I walked around for a few game hours and nothing really changed. I would call this a success if my plan was only to get it right, but what I actually wanted was proof. I came here looking for dust devils, storms, or even haboobs, something where I could certainly see the wind in effect and not this fair weather bullshit. So I spent a few more days looking for something else, but this time my prediction was actually very accurate, and the weather wasn't changing at all. But I didn't give up, and after a few more days hanging around, this happened. I noticed that the clouds were suddenly speeding across the sky. At this point, I didn't know if it was really moving faster than the previous days or if I was just imagining it. But then I noticed the bushes and the dust, and they were clearly moving way faster than before. The smoke coming from this fire was also a great indicator of which direction the wind was blowing, and the clouds were moving the same way. So I decided to say my new prediction. This must be a dust storm. There's no way. The wind is so weird right now. It wasn't like this. A synoptic dust storm. For those who don't know, they are storms that build up slowly, cover a large area, and can last for several days. Although usually without any rain or lightning, and today I think it fits the scenario. As I waited, clouds started forming pretty close to the ground, especially these ones with a heap, which I didn't notice at the time, and they completely screwed me, because if cumulus cloud starts growing vertically, updrafts can form inside the cloud, potentially developing then into a nimbocumulus cloud, and these are the ones you don't want to see coming. It was already afternoon when a layer of clouds appeared, and the sky suddenly became darker. The winds were still blowing fast, nimbus clouds were forming, and then a dust storm finally broke out. I couldn't see anything, but really the strangest thing I noticed was the wind had suddenly changed direction. At first I thought it didn't mean anything, but I was wrong, because when the wind shifts direction in the desert, it's usually an indication of a change in atmospheric pressure, which typically means an approaching weather event. But I still don't understand why the wind is blowing in the opposite way until the night fell. It was almost 9, the temperature dropped to 18 degrees Celsius, when suddenly the dust storm settled and a thunderstorm started approaching. It turns out, The dust storm was only a warning. The growing clouds were actually bad thunderstorms developing into nimbocumulus clouds. And I think this is the closest thing we have to a haboob in Red Dead Redemption 2. Although we don't see that distinct vertical wall of dust in the game, they are exactly like this inside. Dark, high-speed winds and immediately followed by thunder and lightning. But what makes me think this is a haboob representation is actually the formation process. Those nimbocumulus clouds I mentioned were forming even before the dust storm, and then suddenly a layer of nimbostratus clouds appeared, and it turns out my prediction wasn't wrong, it was incomplete. I was so focused on the wind that I stopped looking at other things. It's a shame we don't have a visual representation of haboobs in game. That would have been awesome since the real life desert is known for having them. But after New Austin, I kept experimenting different biomes, different temperatures, different times of the day. And the more I observed, the more I realized that every place seemed to follow its own patterns. Clouds still meant something, the wind was still crucial, temperature mattered, the time of the day also mattered. None of those things were random, but none of them were enough on their own either. At first, I thought I was learning how to forecast the weather. Looking back, I was actually learning how the game behaves, and I think that's an important distinction. So answering the question, can you forecast the weather in Red Dead Redemption 2? I guess you can, but not really in the way I initially thought. I don't think it's possible to forecast tomorrow's weather in Red Dead Redemption 2. Not because the system isn't believable, quite the opposite. It's believable enough that after spending hours watching the sky, measuring temperatures, following the wind and waiting for storms, I genuinely started treating it like a real atmosphere. The game isn't trying to simulate a hyper-realistic weather, and it doesn't have to. It only needs to simulate enough to convince you that it exists. I never learned how to predict tomorrow's weather, but somewhere along the way, I learned how to read Red Dead's weather, and honestly, I think that's even cooler. I'm Lilo Skeleton, thanks for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. Have a great day.